Well, it's the end of Mystery Month and Halloween is around the corner, so I thought it'd be fitting to look at a case that is both unsolved and something straight out of a slasher film. In the spring of 1946, an unknown man stalked Lover's Lane shrouded in a mask. When I say mask, it is more like a pillowcase with holes cut into it, something out of Django Unchained, for example. The case goes by many different names: the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, the Phantom Killer, or the Phantom Slayer, but I'm just going to refer to it as the Phantom Killer of Texarkana. Also, again, I am aware BuzzFeed Unsolved covered this case, and like last week, I still don't give a fuck. So, from the name, it is obviously a town on the border between Arkansas and Texas. In 1946, World War II was barely in the past. The Cold War hadn't kicked off proper yet, and Truman was president. I am horrible at segues, so with those facts in mind, we head to Texarkana, where on February 22nd, 1946, 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and 19-year-old Mary Jean Larry were parked on a dirt road. The two had gone to see a movie together and decided to head down Robinson Road past rows of houses for a little alone time. Around 10 minutes after they parked, a figure wearing a cloth mask that looked like a pillowcase with holes cut into it walked up to the car. Hollis was blinded by the light of a flashlight and he assumed it was a prank, so he told the man that he had the wrong people. The response of the man to Hollis was, "I don't want to kill you, fella, so do what I say." Yes, that was a horrible southern accent. I was trying to go for Texan, but I can't do Texan. Horrible southern accent wins. So anyways, both were ordered out of the car and Hollis was ordered to take off his pants, which Hollis obliged the demand, only to be struck in the head with the butt of a pistol. Not once, but twice. Larry herself said that she thought she had heard a shot with how loud it was, but that was Hollis's skull fracturing. As Hollis lay there, pretty much down for the count, the man turned his attention to Larry. Larry showed him Hollis's wallet to show they had no money, thinking this crazy KKK-looking asshole is trying to rob them. To which the crazy man wearing a pillowcase hit her as well. He told her to stand and run, which she did, having the energy to do so because she gets a buff for being a final girl, I am sure. But this isn't a movie, and hilariously, apparently the guy didn't like the direction she was running, so he yelled for her to run the other way. So she took off running, and what happened next was not so funny. He caught up with her next to an old vehicle and asked her why she ran. She answered because he told her to. He called her a liar. He struck her and did some things I am not going to mention with the barrel of a pistol. After the unmentionable incident, she took off running again, being as loud as she possibly could to try to wake people up, even calling a passing car in the neighborhood, but was ignored. But she was able to rouse residents of one home and was able to call the police. Both would be hospitalized, Larry with minor injuries and Hollis with multiple skull fractures. Both would live. But their stories conflicted on what the assailant looked like. Larry claimed that even though he was wearing a mask, that he was African American, while Hollis claims that he was white. But Hollis also stated he couldn't see very well with a flashlight blinding him. Both would agree that he was 6 feet tall. But investigators challenged Larry on her account, thinking that both of them were covering for the actual perpetrator because they knew him. Little did the police know this was about to get a bit more bloody. On the morning of March 24th, a motorist stumbled upon the remains of Richard Griffin, who was 29 at the time, and Polly Ann Moore, who was 17. And holy shit, that age gap. Dude had been dating a 17-year-old for 6 weeks when he was close to 30 and took her to a lover's lane. The lover's lane was called Rich Road, by the way. I'm not going to judge the age difference, different time, but holy shit, that wouldn't fly today. But the motorist thought they were asleep, till he looked closer. Griffin was between the front seats on his knees with his head on his crossed hands. Moore was face down in the back seat. Griffin had been shot twice while he was in the car, but a blood-soaked patch of earth suggested that both of them were shot in the back of the head outside the car, then placed back in the car. A .32 caliber shell casing was found in the car, suggesting they were shot with a Colt. Both were fully clothed. While there were rumors of unmentionable acts, none were ever found. But the police interviewed up to 60 witnesses and put out a reward for $500 for any information. But the reward would cause nothing but a headache because of the many false leads. It got up to 100 false leads before the police kind of dropped the idea. Betty Jo Booker was a 15-year-old saxophonist in a band. At 1:30 a.m. on April 14th, she was picked up by 17-year-old Paul Martin after a gig she performed. At 6:30 a.m. off North Road, Martin's body was found by G.H. Weaver and his wife and his son. He had been shot 4 times, once in the nose, once through the left fourth rib, through the right hand, and through the back of his neck. At 11:30 a.m., Booker's body was found 2 miles from where Martin's was found. She was laying on her back with her hand in her overcoat pocket. She was shot once through the chest and once through the face. 3 miles from that was Martin's car, parked outside of Spring Lake Park with the keys still in it. In this case, Martin and Booker struggled and fought back. But there is also evidence to suggest that Booker was, well, that unmentionable thing I had spoken of. Booker's saxophone was missing for 6 months until they found it near where Booker had been murdered. The murderer was able to kill them with a .32 caliber semi-automatic Colt pistol, which the police were able to link to Griffin and Moore's murder. The thing is, these two weren't an item. Martin was in town visiting and agreed to pick up Booker and drive her home. Fingerprints were found on the steering wheel that didn't match Martin or Booker, which suggests that the killer actually drove them out to Spring Lake Park. It was also after this attack that the police realized that the same man who assaulted Hollis and Larry killed these 4 people. At this point, the Texas Rangers were put in charge of the case, and Manuel Gonzalez was tasked with finding and bringing to justice this killer. Virgil Starks, a 37-year-old welder, was sitting at home with his wife, 36-year-old Katie, listening to the radio when Katie heard something outside. She asked him to turn down the radio, which he did, but then he was shot in the back of the head twice. Katie, seeing her husband slumped over, rushed to the phone to call police. From the same window that the bullets had killed her husband rang out 2 more shots. Both hit her in the face, one in the cheek and out just under her right ear, the second breaking her jaw and lodging right under her tongue. She then heard him in the back porch trying to rip through the screen. She rushed to the bedroom. Feeling she was going to die, she began writing a note. She heard the killer coming through the kitchen window. She rushed around the house before she made her escape out the front door. She ran to her neighbor's house before she collapsed and told him Virgil is dead. That neighbor did the most Texas thing I have ever heard of. He shot his rifle in the air to get another neighbor's attention, where they were able to get Katie to a hospital. Katie is so badass she lost a lot of blood, and yet she never went into shock and her heart rate stayed normal. So Katie Starks became the final girl because she survived. The killer was long gone, leaving muddy footprints and a flashlight. He also left fingerprints and bloody palm prints through the house. Bloodhounds were brought in and they were able to track him for about 200 yards before the trail became cold at a highway. Katie Starks never seen who was attacking her and her husband. She couldn't help the police at all. After this, the Phantom Killer just seemed to vanish. The last attack is divisive. Some in law enforcement claim it has nothing to do with the others, while some claim it was the last act of the killer. Some feel it doesn't match the MO of the killer. Others argue it's the progression of the MO. What doesn't help with this is the caliber used was a .22 caliber instead of a .32. Either way, Katie Starks was a badass. There are other attacks that could have been the Phantom Killer, but they are not confirmed. Earl McSpadden was found dead on a railroad track cut in half, but he had already been dead by the time the train bisected him. Many actually claim that he was the Phantom Killer himself and took his own life, but it's hearsay. Lawrence Hogan and Elaine Eldridge were killed at a lover's lane on October 8, 1946. Both were killed with a .32 caliber pistol. That is the closest one that might have been another victim, but they haven't been linked. But here's what we know about the killer. The killer himself was 6 feet tall. He wore a mask that was cloth and looked like a pillowcase with holes for the eyes and mouth. Hollis believed that he was a tanned white male around 30 years old, while Larry thinks he was black. His MO was that he would attack couples in secluded places. He attacked late at night, 3 weeks apart. Gonzalez stated that the Phantom Killer was a shrewd criminal who had left no stone unturned to conceal his identity and activities, and that the killer was a cunning individual who would go to all lengths to avoid apprehension. Dr. Anthony LaPalla, a psychiatrist with the Federal Corrections Institution in Texarkana, stated that he believed that the killer was driven by a strong sexual sadism. They had planned to keep killing people like Virgil Starks outside of town. LaPalla believed that the killer was following the case and knew what roads to go down and when, following what places were being patrolled and which ones weren't. Which is why he chose the farmhouse of Virgil Starks instead of a lover's lane. LaPalla thought that the killer wasn't hiding, that it was merely pretending to be a good citizen and was able to hide in plain sight. Since he wasn't maniacal, LaPalla believed that he wasn't a veteran, feeling veterans would have a harder time controlling their urges. To him, the killer was methodical. He even thinks the killer was a loner in life. So let's talk about suspects, shall we? After the murder of Virgil Starks, a lot of people were questioned and released without a single lead. But then police officer Max Tackett came up with a theory. He came to the realization before each murder a car had been stolen, but then the car that had been stolen would be found later after the murder. So he put two and two together and decided to look into a car that had been stolen before Virgil had been killed in his own living room. Sure enough, he found one. Not only that, but he and his partner found the car that was stolen in a parking lot. So the wait was on to see who decided to come for the vehicle. To their surprise, it wasn't a black man or a 6-foot-tall tanned white man. It was 20-year-old Peggy Sweeney. Peggy was arrested and immediately informed the police that it belonged to her husband, Yule Sweeney, who happened to be in Atlanta at the time trying to sell stolen cars. Yule was arrested when he returned to Texas. Yule did try running at an Arkansas motor coach bus station, but he didn't get very far. When he was arrested, he blurted out, "Hell, I know what you want me for. You want me for more than us stealing a car." I know, bad southern accent, but I don't care. But that statement was really strange to police, but not really strange if you think about it. The Phantom Killer was all over the news. Police were trying to arrest him. Good chance he was thinking that the police were going to try to pin the killings on him. So Yule had a rap sheet for assault, burglary, and theft of cars. Peggy and him were living in a hotel at the time, and the police searched the room and found a pocket with the name Stark stenciled on it. Now, I'm pretty sure that he wasn't a fan of Iron Man or Game of Thrones, since this stuff didn't exist in the 40s, and so I don't know what they mean by pocket, so I'm just assuming a torn pants pocket or something. It wasn't really clear in my readings what it was, so I'm just going to assume that it was a pocket that was ripped off some clothes. But Peggy didn't help Yule's case at all. Before he could even explain himself, Peggy confessed that he was the Phantom Killer. She even said she joined him on one occasion, but she said that she never took part in the attacks. But then she would recant, then say he was the killer, then recant again. Each time the tale she weaved was completely different. Sounds suspicious, like she wanted to get back at him for something, but then loving him and then deciding that he was lying, then hating him again. Girl had some issues if you asked me. But the investigators wanted to believe her. She had information that only the police knew, but she was so inconsistent, and many of her claims had to be taken with a pinch of salt. She kept altering her story, and well, she didn't want to testify against her husband. So she was a pain in the fucking ass. Also, the problem was she had talked to so many investigators that it was hard to know which story was genuine and which one wasn't. She would tell one officer one thing, recant it to another, and so on and so forth until this whole entire mess was just a clusterfuck. She also wrote a letter to her parents that the police were able to intercept, telling her parents that she lied. She stated she only did after repeated questioning. So did Yule kill 5 people? According to the evidence, probably not. His fingerprints didn't match and he was never charged. He still got a life sentence because he was an habitual offender. He died in 1994, and while Max Tackett and his partner went to their graves thinking it was Yule, everyone else thinks it wasn't. On November 5th, 1948, in Fayetteville, Arkansas, Henry Booker Tennyson, a University of Arkansas student, was found dead. He self-deleted using cyanide. Commonly referred to as HB, when his room was searched, they found a note. A note that claimed that he was the Phantom Killer. This 18-year-old boy claimed to be the Phantom Killer, and though he had more notes refuting that claim, investigators decided, well, let's just look into this. Yay for bad southern accent. So Tennyson was in Texarkana when Virgil Starks was murdered, but a friend claimed that Tennyson was with him when the murder took place. Also, his fingerprints didn't match. Also, all his guns didn't match ballistically. There are others, but those are the 2 main ones. Most sites I went to name these 2. To find more, I could use a Wikipedia article, but it's a confusing mess as Wikipedia can be. So forgive me if I'm not going to attempt to use Wikipedia as a source because that can be changed and altered and false. I might do a sequel to this discussing the others in the future, but for now we're going to stick with those two. As you can tell, this crime is unsolved. I am sure someone has tried to connect this case to the Zodiac case because of how similar it is, but Zodiac happened 22 years after this, so that's a long time to go without shooting and killing people. Most killers can't go more than a month without, especially when they reach that manic state and just go all out. That, and if the witnesses are to be believed, and the Zodiac was connected in some way to this case, then the Zodiac would have been in his 50s when he was killing people. I don't know why I thought of this, but I don't think the cases are connected. What I do know is there are 2 movies based on this case, both called The Town That Dreaded Sundown, one in 1976 and one in 2014. I have been told that they are good, but I skipped them for this because I wanted to look into the case, not what Hollywood thinks of the case. Either way, this is a cold case. Probably will remain one too since it's been over 70 years. But the good news is, it's been over 70 years, which means the killer was most likely dead. Unless he was 10. Nah, he'd be dead.